their shapes a little bit more. Now, as you can see here, we've done plenty of work already, but there is a lot of nuance to sculpting hands. And honestly, you could spend hours sculpting a hand, and that's when it would be good. So the longer you spend on it, the better it's going to be. And that rule applies to most anything you do, really. But in this case, we're dividing the model another time, and I'm using the clay brush here to sort of give me a little bit of skin. Now, the reason the clay brush is better than the clay buildup is because it adds volume, but not an enormous amount of volume. So it ends up giving you more surface difference than anything else. It doesn't really alter the volumes that much, but it gives you a texture, let's say. So this texture is what we're after right now. And I'm basically going all over and adding these bumps and just irregularities to each finger. Now, if you feel that you've added too much, you can always use the move tool and just push it back. That being said, there is no substitute for just going in and by hand editing everything. And even if not using the move tool, you can always use the negative function of the clay brush and actually cut inside. The most important part here is just to take your time. Observe your hand, look closely at the reference, and start sculpting, start editing each finger. You'll see they become a lot bulkier, a lot more unique, let's say. And I'm using the Alt here because I felt like it was just too much. But when you push the pads out of the hand with a little bit more volume, you tend to get a more, let's say, cartoony result, but it's more of a forced result. Let's say it's an exaggeration. It's what the old sculptors used to use when sculpting anything. You always sort of exaggerate it because chances are it's not gonna look the way you want it if you subdue it. So there's no secret here. I'm just using the clay brush and I'm getting rid of this ridge. You can see this sharp line here that the specular's catching on. And you don't want that. That is just, a couple of edges that got together and started getting divided. And, they will take away from it. So this hand is starting to shape up a little bit better. And you can value now the use of polygroups. I'm not using them right now, but I'm used to working around the model like this. If you're having difficulties, you can always single it out like we did previously. And this sort of handcrafted approach is what's really going to make your models pop. It's going to look like you've put a lot of effort into this because you have. It's not just some automatic thing. You've gone in each of the fingers, you've done plenty of sculpting on all of them, and all of this will show when it comes time to reveal your model to others. The attention to detail is really important here, even though we're still in more or less the blocking stages of this sculpt. Adding a bit more. And I didn't want to skip any of this because, as I said before, if to me the process is really important. And if you guys see what I'm doing, if you observe, all the little shapes that I'm trying to retain, what are the contours that I'm looking for on each finger, on each joint, for example, then you can follow along in your sculpt and try to mimic it. So you'll notice fairly soon here that my knuckles are sort of like little balls coming out of the finger. That is not anything that I am liking right now, so that will change. That will be subdued in a later lesson, if not this one. And here I'm adding some more detail to the thumb. Watch where I'm directing this detail from. I'm pushing it towards the thumb. That means that on the back there will be more volume, and then on the front there will be less. So it'll give you that nice thumb shape, that nice arc. I'm also trying to remove any of these hard edges that you see. Again, with these white lines here that don't really please me. I think I've mentioned this before, but I think the clay brush is really underused nowadays in the advent of the clay buildup. But you should not ignore it. It's a great brush, especially when you put the lazy mouse on and then one lazy radius, as you can see on the top right of my interface there. The lazy mouse is on. And look at this just ease of detailing here. Just by creating a few strokes, you instantly add some skin variation, just, a little bit of that dent that you have in between your connection of the thumb and the fingers. And now it's time to use the trim dynamic and actually just press down and give ourselves some fingernail space. So the trim dynamic and pushing down on the fingers is a trick that I came up with. At least I don't know of any other person that does this, but the trim dynamic, once you put it on the fingertips like this, you can see how easily you can create the shape of the finger to look really, really nice. Not only that, the contour of the finger itself looks really good. So when you turn this around a little bit, you'll see that it looks really sharp. It comes down and looks really realistic. So it's a cool little trick that makes your hands look a lot better. Obviously, you still need fingernails, but for that stuff, you can, we'll talk about it in a little bit. So I'm going to smooth out the edges here because you have to remember that the fingernails don't go off the finger unless they're really long. So you do need that skin underneath. So here I'm just sort of breaking apart that edge that was really, really strong because of the trim dynamics, the way the brush works, really. I'm also taking this opportunity to sort of reshape and replace my knuckles. As you can see, I'm putting them a little bit higher. Now our hand's starting to take shape, but we're still well ways away. As you can see, I'm pulling the fingernails back. We have a really nice shape to the fingers already, but they're not quite there yet. In any case, I'm going to start just doing overall refinements now, and most likely we're going to be working on fingernails next. So that's about it